The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
It's the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Hall of Fame writer, broadcaster, and announcer Jason Bryant. In this show, we talk news, reviews, previews, and interviews with the most notable names and personalities in wrestling. Today, our topic is about scheduling, and that might seem really boring, but it goes back to my home state of Virginia. We'll talk to Spotsylvania Athletic Director Bill Swink as he and his school now have a proposal into the Virginia High School League, which is the sanctioning body for high school wrestling in the state of Virginia, about tweaking the schedule and the requirements for dates, and with an emphasis on dual meets. So to try to get more people out to dual meets, to get more kids out for the sport, we'll talk about that. Before we get even rolling into that discussion, and Bill and I go back a long time, I want to thank Bill Holton, who sent in a contribution to the Matt Talk Podcast Network. He has been a team member. He has sent a contribution in as well. If you want to support this network, you want to support the shows, you want to support the collegewrestlingscoreboard.com, yes, I have a domain name now for the nightly scoreboard that I update at collegewrestlingscoreboard.com. You can contribute to that effort by going to patreon.com/MattTalkOnline or simply matttalkonline.com/join the team. What's that do? Well, that pretty much takes care of the time, the effort, the hosting costs, and, as they say, keeps the lights on. So won't beat you up with that too much. Right now, Bill Swink and I talk Virginia stuff. It's kind of relevant nationwide, but that's here on Short Time. And if you know what that means, cue the beep and whack. And now talking with the athletic director at Spotsylvania High School and chairman of the Virginia Wrestling Association, Bill Swink. Not his first appearance on the Matt Talk Podcast Network. He was part of the VAWA podcast we had a couple years ago. But Coach Swink and I go way back, over 20 years in the world of wrestling media and websites. But right now we're talking about one of the pressing concerns in high school wrestling, that is dwindling attendance, that is forfeits. And you've got a proposal, at least Spotsylvania High School, where you teach, direct, and, administrate, put in a proposal with the Virginia High School League about dates and date requirements. Let's just, before we even get into the nuts and bolts of what you're basically proposing here, what is the problem we're identifying with, and what's caused this date change proposal to go through?
Well, you kind of hit it in the intro a little bit, Jason, is the fact that we have dwindling numbers of participation. It's declining, and our fan support is declining. And I think here in Virginia, our current schedule structure is 12 dates. You can do whatever you want with those 12 dates. It could be a dual meet. It could be 12 tournaments. It could be, whatever you want. And with that, I think we got to get back to some dual meets to, one, bring the casual fan back in the sport, and that would be the students at your school, grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, those folks, where everything's not a marathon. Right now our midweek stuff is mostly quad meets, and they're very long on a Wednesday, and the kids at your school don't want to come and watch that long. It doesn't hold their interest. Even parents don't like to be in the gym that long, and then every weekend, we all know how that goes. You got, 10, 12-hour days often on Saturdays. And I think it's become a deterrent for kids coming out. And again, people coming to watch.
Yeah, a couple things, I will reference back to a lot of stuff when I was growing up in Virginia. Of course, you were coaching. You've won state championships at Colonial Forge now in your new role at Spotsylvania. One thing I want to point out, though, is your old place at Colonial Forge, on the same street as Brook Point, which won a state championship the same year. I mean, it's like two high schools within, a mile and a half of each other, won class state championships. And that's like the type of neighborhood dual meet that should be packing either gym, and that just wasn't the case.
It wasn't, and we weren't doing a lot of dual meets because of the way the district had changed their structure for our district competitions, where we were doing multiple duels on a Saturday or on a Wednesday, and rotating around until we got our district dual meets in. We wrestled North Stafford and Mountain View a couple times in dual meets while I was there. We wrestled, and then in the past we've wrestled Robinson and Battlefield and Christiansburg and some of those schools in dual meets. And I like a dual meet. Growing up in Pennsylvania and wrestled there and coached there, dual meets all the time. And, they're having some of the same problems too. So it's not just dual meets, I think, with our sport and getting more kids out, but I think that is part of the issue that we have.
And Virginia kind of exacerbates the issue because went from 3 classes public schools to 6, which we've kind of talked about ad nauseum on a couple other different podcasts. But that also, it disrupts the district schedule because you've got the traditional districts are intact. But for example, let's look down at the Bay Rivers district in what was old Group AA or the Peninsula district where I'm from. You've got class, basically 4, 5, and 6. I think Phoebus might even be a class 3 at this point, but, in the Bay Rivers, you've got, 4, 3, and 2, these teams, they're in a district dynamic that really the district schedule means nothing because when they go to the postseason, they're not competing for seeds. So, you've got situations and Bill, I know that you've had situations where, it's like, well, this is a district duel. We've got, I got 40 kids in my room. I don't, what do my starters get out of this? I mean, we've got teams sending, their number 2 teams to district matches because basically you've got some schedules that are, 50 dual meets and, it's just so many different things with the Virginia factor. But what do we do? We got to make the district schedule matter and get these dual meets because, a quad meet on a Wednesday night back when I was coming through was just a foreign concept because they take a long time. Why are these respective districts even allowing a quad meet to take place on a Wednesday night? That was like a Saturday thing.
It was, and why? Because there's gotten to be so many forfeits. I think Jason is part of it. So some of your teams, are full teams ready to go, and then you have other teams that are half teams. So the matches aren't lasting as long. So they paired those schools up, and maybe 2 of the stronger schools with 2 of the weaker schools, and it's not taking quite as long as a traditional, but you still got 45-minute wait time in between dual meets. So it's still three in a night is a lot. And I agree with you. How do we change that? I talked to Mike Moyer at the National Wrestling Coach Association a little bit just to get some of his insight, and talked about duels. And one of the things that he says, we got to make duels important. So, another goal or something we would like to propose in the near future is to have a dual meet state championship in Virginia and make duels important. You can have talk about the state championships. I can have 5 really good kids and finish in the top 3 in the state. I can't do that in a dual meet. So if we make duels important, if there's something to advance to, now maybe coaches will beat the streets a little harder and find those guys to fill those weight classes and be able to fill the full team so they can advance to a dual regional and a state regional or a state dual meet championship. That would be something I think that would help a lot.
One thing, too, that I've seen is, I'll use my own experience here. When did I get involved with the sport? As a sophomore in high school, and I went to a dual meet on a Wednesday night. That was a dual meet that brought, and then there were a lot of students there. I mean, yes, it helped that the program at Poquoson was a winning program, and there were good wrestlers to watch. But you go in, it was an hour and a half. I had somebody there that said, "Okay, a pin is 6 points, a technical fall is 5. Okay, that's a take." I mean, it was really, it was a refresher. It was a crash course in how to understand the sport of wrestling, and that brought, eventually I came out for the team. Granted, I didn't play any type of role in those monster teams we had in terms of on the mat, but that's where kids go to events and it's infectious when a team wins and their classmates are winning. Kids come out. Part of these things is too, we've got fewer coaches in schools these days. We have administrators that are like, all right, let's just, we've got how many basketball teams and these mega high schools are being built with like one gym, and they're not going to move basketball practice for a wrestling dual meet. Practice is more important than a competition. So we got a lot of those factors, but with the dual meet, it's we get kids that it brings community out. I mean, Great Bridge had to get a police escort out of town one time when we wrestled them in a dual meet. I mean, the fire marshal looked the other way with 1,800 people in a gym that didn't seat that many. So neighborhood rivalries, television, getting kids interested in the sport as a freshman. Maybe that freshman comes out 2 years later because he's always gone to the matches. So what are some things that you've seen that help get kids to come out to maybe solve this forfeit debate because of things like dual meets?
Yeah, things that I've seen, exactly what you said. That when I was at Colonial Forge, we had dual meet. The football players just come and watch. They wouldn't come to a quad but we got athletes that said, "Hey, this is pretty cool. I never saw it before. Can I give it a try?" And we got kids like that because they got to see it and they were willing to come watch a dual meet versus a quad on a weeknight. And you're right. Districts can be proactive. JC, you mentioned that. Us in our Battlefield district here this year, we did no quad meets. They had done them in the past. We did some double duels and single duels. Still, 2 rounds much better than 3 rounds to do a double duel. So we took some steps in that direction. And change sometimes has to be slow. People don't adapt as fast as you'd like sometimes. But everyone was accepting and people liked it. I ran a try meet this year on 2 mats again to get it out. So we got it done much quicker doing a try on 2 mats, splitting the teams and going that way. So there are a lot of things to do, and you get the community there. You get the middle school kids to come and watch. They'll come watch a dual meet. Mom and dad will bring them up to come watch a dual meet. They're not going to come up and stay for 3 or 4 hours, on a school night to get kids involved and get them to see the product that you're trying to put out on the mat.
Okay, we kind of buried the lead here a little bit. Well, what the proposal is 14 dates. 7 of them must be single duels. And I tweeted as soon as I saw Ray Nimmo from the Virginian Pilot tweet about, Spotsylvania submitted this proposal. I looked at it and go, well, wait, let's think. What do we have? When I was in high school, we had the district schedule, which at that point I think was 8 teams, and we had those were the 7 AA teams we wrestled. Then we'd go out and wrestle Tallwood, Cox, Great Bridge. Basically, we were a AA school. We challenged ourselves by wrestling the better AAA schools. More AAA on the schedule than AA. I think there was a weekend try meet, whereas like Southampton and maybe Bruton would come together because those were the far edges of the district. I mean, to get there, that's a haul. So you'd come together, say at like a York or a Poquoson or a Tab, so that those schools would travel. Okay, we're going to wrestle, a try meet on a Saturday versus, okay, that takes 3 hours versus, okay, we're going to wrestle a 10-team rotational and 5 on Friday, 5 on Saturday. I mean, we're not, I think that's also a factor of burning out kids. Is just because you can wrestle 5 matches in a day doesn't mean you should. And,
right.
Yep. So let's go back at 14 dates. 7 must be single duels, with 7 of them being multi-team events, whether it be tournaments, whether it be quads. The 7 single duels. So right now there is no limit on the amount of dates or what you can do. You could wrestle 14 rotationals and get 140 duels or something. My math's probably really bad on that, but you could wrestle a lot of dual meets. I remember Woodbridge wrestled 32 dual meets in a year, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right, and they're doing it in the rotationals where you're getting 5 in a day or 8 in a weekend, a Friday, Saturday tournament, or whatever it might be. And, we hosted one of those at the Battlefield Duels at Colonial Forge. And you're right. Sometimes we do over wrestle our kids as coaches, and you got to step back and take a different perspective. But, 7 duels. Why at 7? We're at 12 right now, 12 dates. 7 and 7, I thought most districts are 8 teams or fewer. That gave people the ability to schedule district dual meets during the week, and it still gave you 7 weekends to be able to enter your tournaments and get the kids plenty of matches throughout the season.
Also, you're building community. You got people working concessions. You got table workers. Sure. It's not like I'm looking at some of these schedules. They might have 2 home events a year. That boggles my mind. What do we, what's been the support like?
A lot of schools only have 1. Yeah, a lot of schools only have 1. I mean, the people I have talked to seem to really like the idea. Some people don't. Some people are resistant to change. Some are concerned that their district is still going to schedule multi team events, which then that only leaves them with dual meets. That's a district problem there, and they need to work at it at that level if the change would take place, which I think most districts would. they're not going to talk about change until the change happens. So, and when I first came here, Jason, I coached, we had 12 dates, but you had to have 5 duels. 4 could be a try or a quad meet, and we were only allowed 3 tournaments. That's how it was in the early 90s and maybe even till the late 90s, and they switched to the 12 dates. I don't remember when the switch took place, that you could do whatever you wanted. So,
from your peers, from coaches, what seems to be the biggest drawback? I mean, I've heard that it's like, okay, well, the kids need mat time. Well, if you don't have kids to compete in these weight class, how can you need more mat? I mean, I think we should probably dial back. I mean, I know New Jersey has limits with the number of matches you can wrestle before the postseason. Each state has its own nuances and issues, but I mean, I'm seeing there are schools within like my own area, the Bay Rivers district, that are 1,100 kids, and they can't put 5 guys on a team. So, girls too. I mean, some of these schools, like they'll have 5 wrestlers and 3 are girls. It's like, how there's 1,000 kids in your school. There should never be this problem in filling at least 12 weight classes.
I agree, Jason. And you hit something else too, is a lot of schools only have 1 or 2 home events. So you're not getting anyone to come watch because you're not even putting your product out there, where most other sports, half your schedule is home and half your schedule is away. With wrestling, most schools, they wrestle 1 or 2 times in their own gym, and the rest of the time on the road. So again, people aren't there to see what we're trying to do. So we're not selling ourselves.
We talk about getting parents involved. I mean, I think I was watching a dual meet. Newport News Public Schools put a tri meet up on its website, on its YouTube channel. I was watching it, and granted, it was some single A school, with some old single A schools, and I'm sitting there going, okay, there's actually some parents in this gym. It's not what I expected. Whereas, a week prior, I'm at the Virginia Duels. I'm watching. I was like, this place used to be jammed with all the local teams. It's like the parents aren't even going to show up for even something cool like the Virginia Duels, which is it's not an all day thing for all these teams. You come in, you're wrestling at this time, you're wrestling at this time. That used to be like the event where people would flock to. Now it's like, is this type of scheduling really kind of just said parents not even going to spend the time watching their kids wrestle?
With what we have now, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I talk to parents now, a lot more in a different role as the AD versus the coach. And, you got newer kids and they'll tell you, oh man, I don't know if I could do another one of those Saturday tournaments. That thing lasts all day long. It's a really long time. I got little kids. I got, whatever it might be. And you're right. They're not coming to watch some of those events that take longer. And we've wrestled some dual meets, and I had a mom tell me her kid's a freshman, never wrestled before. She said, now this is what I liked. I liked this. It was easier to understand. There's only 2 teams there, and I knew what was going on. So, again, we want to get our kids mat time. We want to compete. At the same time, we got to be ambassadors for our sport as well, and try to get as many people exposed to it as we can.
Now, the issues we have in Virginia, again, 6 classes. The district schedule does not matter. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you guys are still in the Battlefield district, or what spot's he at now?
Yeah, we're in the Battlefield district.
Okay, yeah. And so and there's classes from probably 4A to 2A or 5A to 2A in that.
Actually, we're one of the better ones. We only have 2. We're 3As and 4As in our district.
Okay.
But most of the districts, like you said, have 3 or 4 classifications in them.
Yeah, because they're the old districts based on, geography and, basically, tradition. Like Phoebus, for example, was always the smallest city school in Hampton, yet, like 700-800 kids. And all of a sudden, wait, they're winning the big school football championships, which is, it's just strange. Like, okay, the littlest school can do this in football, but now we can't it's just so many different things. Now, with getting, I guess part of the problem with Virginia is the Virginia High School League. For those who are unfamiliar, a private entity that kind of governs how the activities and athletics are ran in the state of Virginia. And what changes need to happen at the top for these districts to kind of fall in line? Because if the VHSL doesn't do something, the districts sure as heck aren't going to, kind of set out on their own and do it, right?
Yeah, I don't know, Jason, if, what the best solution is. again, I mentioned about it has to mean something. And right now, the district doesn't mean anything. So not just in the sport of wrestling, I think in all sports sometimes that gets lost. The Commonwealth District, which I used to be in when I was at Colonial Forge, they are holding all their tournaments before the season. It's the first thing they do in the season is hold their volleyball tournament, their basketball tournament. They do it at the beginning of the year. And then, at the end, everyone goes to a regional now. Your district tournament does not qualify you. So I don't know if maybe the scheduling should be within your region versus within the district if the districts aren't going to qualify you for anything. Everything's on PowerPoints now to get into playoffs, not necessarily head-to-head competition because of the district regions and the classes being all over the place.
Yeah, we had these conferences, like some of the conferences down in the Hampton Roads area, which is one of the 3.5, I guess, population centers. You've got Richmond, Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, Roanoke to a lesser extent, even though there's some big schools out there. But it's like you got Gloucester and Great Bridge in the same like conference back on the old structure, right. And that caused all sorts of missed class time and travels before they said, all right, let's go back to the district structure and we'll break away for the postseason. That seemed to alleviate some of that, but we're still in situations where, okay, like I'll use my alma mater the other night. There's, Poquoson and New Kent has become a nice little rivalry in the Bay Rivers district along with Smithfield. But, you're sending JV kids because the duel doesn't matter. I mean, it could have been a single duel underneath the mat lamp, but no, it's okay. Well, it's a quad and we're going to send our JV guys because, what good does this do? Because we're 2A and they're 3A or 4A. I mean, it's like the competition to look at it. Well, this isn't going to is it going to help us? Yeah. But is it a waste of time? Well, yeah. I mean, it's not great for the sport of wrestling to really, have your district schedule and you're not sending starters out there. I mean, it's kind of a byproduct of nothing actually mattering.
And you're right. You're 100% right. And it does need to matter. We got to figure out a way to make it matter. And I think that's something the VHSL is looking at and trying to find a solution for it. And I don't think there's an easy solution. I think sometimes they try to be everything to everybody, and it doesn't always work, if that makes sense. Sometimes you got to just say, hey, this is what we have to do. From a competitive standpoint, these are the things that have to happen.
All right, so getting back to what we can fix, and just for backstory, Virginia did do a state dual meet championship for a short time. It ended in 1996 when Great Bridge beat Franklin County 66-0 in the finals. So that was your state, right. And it was only in AAA. AA and single A didn't have it. And now with the 6-class system the way it is, I always thought, okay, if you're going to go with this class size because they want to make everything like the other sports, all right, okay, make your, you got your duels, fine. 6 classes. Let's bring let's bring consolidate our individual state championships. I always thought that 2 would probably be good. 2, I mean, Jersey has 1. I think 2, you could probably say, okay, you're 3A and up, or you're 4A, 5A, 6A. You keep your classes. You have 2 big events. You can put it like, one of these bigger events. You stagger it. Pennsylvania does a 3-day state tournament. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Why can't our leadership think out of the box with this type of scheduling type of thing, or look at other states and listen to its wrestling coach say, hey, we've got a problem here with forfeits. We got a problem here with we can make money if we do this right. We can make you money, leadership, if we do this right and you just listen. I mean, I guess that's kind of the battle you've been fighting for a long time.
Yeah, it has. And I really do think they're listening more than in the past when we talked about the leadership. And again, that's something kind of working with some other coaches and groups and about proposing a way to do a state dual meet championship in the future and bringing that legislation forward as well. Again, it would have to pass. And, that goes to a vote of principals. So at the end of the day, principals are going to vote on all the legislation and pass it or not pass it.
As far as this proposal goes, so generally I've found out that like principals and people that are in, kind of insulated in their own bubble of whether it be their school system, their district, their state classification, they don't really care about what other states do. So when you have to sit there and maybe pitch this to peer athletic directors or peer principals or other administrators, what is the biggest plus that you are selling about, missed class time and more numbers, more activities for kids? What is the elevator pitch you've got here?
I mean, that's pretty much it, Jason. Less time away, missed time and getting home earlier so kids can do it. More community involvement, more people more in the stands, and more kids eventually being on the team. I mean, that's it. And I think we do that through having dual meets is one avenue. I think there's a lot of others, but I think that's a great start. That's something we can do and everyone can do to help.
With the way Virginia is structured, what are some of the other sports doing that are actually working, or is this kind of a problem across the board and empty gyms for all these sports?
I can tell you, numbers are down in some sports. Now that I'm on that side of athletics, some sports do really well, some not. Sometimes you don't get the crowds until you start the playoffs, So there's all types of things happening. But I think, people in the stands, it's less and less. And I don't know if we go to travel sports or, where that's at, why we're losing fans and those types of even numbers of participation, I think. Nationwide in most sports, they're pretty steady, but they fluctuate, and they're not near what they were as I remember as a kid. Kids going out for teams, and even in the late '80s, early '90s, and it's not just wrestling. I'm talking all teams. It seems like they had way more kids wanting to get involved in sports and athletics, and the more kids you have get involved, the more kids on the team, the more parents you have at the events.
Now, do you think that this format will help build rosters, will help build JV teams, and eventually, you got the single duels. Well, guess what? You got the JV. You got
Exactly.
The key is like, I don't really see too many other sports where you can pull. I mean, football, offensive line, you grab a big kid, he can be a starter right away, but you're pulling a kid out of the hallway, trying to get him to wrestle for the first time. You're trying to convince him to be a year-round wrestler so he gets better. You're trying to convince, actually, in this case, him or her. And you're also saying, okay, now we're going to wrestle 50 times this year, and you're going to get beat 48 of them. And I'm going to expect you to come back the next year after you've basically had the crap beat out of you. We're losing kids like that. I mean, I'm a big proponent of practice and learning. Being a varsity starter is something that should be earned. It's not like, okay, well, it's the only sport that you can come out with 2 practices later, you're a starter. I mean, geez,
sure,
that's a problem.
Sure, it is a problem, and until you increase your roster size, that's something you got to handle delicately. But that is something you got to talk to your kids about, your athletes about, and, stay in their head. And it could be if they're going to get beat once a night versus getting beat 3 times in a night, that can make a difference as well. You can hold them out of a major tournament, individual tournament, if you want, if the competition level is way over their head. So there are ways to work that, but I mean, those are good points. But I do think, again, sometimes in a duel, this, Jason, everybody's important, and it doesn't mean you have to win. It might mean we're going to win the match because the kid doesn't get pinned. Now he feels special. He didn't win, but he helped the team win. And you can sell that side of it as well.
When it comes to retention, again, going back to the schedule, I think that, this will probably lessen the amount of matches you get. Granted, some teams could go in and enter those 7 rotationals if this thing passes, but, athlete retention is always so a problem. It's not just getting them out, it's keeping them out. And what are some things that you've been successful with it? You're at small schools, you've been at big schools, and you've never seemed to have problems with numbers where you've coached. I mean, what are some things that when you get the kid out for the first time, you've been able to keep him out with some certain coaching philosophy?
Yeah, and one is you got to make them feel they're as important as the best kid on your team. You got to make them feel like they're part of the program and that they matter. And it matters that we have good practice partners and people that want to work hard. And we're going to get you competition. That was a problem too as the dual meets started to dwindle. Was getting JV kids competition. Everybody does these JV jamborees now, which are great because the kids can't get good mat time being a JV wrestler. But, for a while, and some schools don't participate in the JV jamborees. And it doesn't matter if you have one kid or you have 30 kids, you can take them all and get them mat time. But you got to get them some mat time as well. And I agree with you. You got to teach fundamentals, teach the basics, and, again, make them feel wanted, make them feel part of the program, and that they're a valuable contributor to your team. When you do that, the kids buy in to what you're doing. And you got to make them it's got to be fun. And wrestling is one of the hardest sports to have fun, but you got to do some things that make it a little fun too, because if kids aren't having fun, you see the surveys everywhere. That's the number one reason we're losing all these kids in middle school is they just say it's not fun anymore. So you got to bring some type of fun to it, whether it's the fun activities within it that's making your kids better through conditioning activities and strength training activities that are just some competitions, a little fun, make it a little different.
As we look at Virginia, is the 6-class system kind of one of the culprits, or did that just exacerbate the problem of the forfeit data? I mean, that's the one thing that drives me nuts is seeing the districts flipped upside down, 20 years later. It's like, no, how does Denby High School was Peninsula District champions for 5-6 straight years. Now, 4 or 5 kids. I mean, there's so many factors, of course. I think coaches not being in the school is one of them, but where is the advocacy for athletics as a whole? Not just in wrestling, from administrators, from principals. Where is that coming from? Or is it, what's the landscape of education like that, even somebody, I'm 20 years out of high school and I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing here sometimes.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of things, Jason. One, we're losing a huge amount of kids in all sports in that middle school level. One, they're saying it's not fun. 2, I mentioned travel sports, and I don't know how much it hurts, but I think that hurts. I know we have kids in all our schools around here that don't play soccer. Soccer is a big one because they play on a travel team, and their travel team doesn't let them play on the high school team. So you're losing kids to those types of things as well. Specialization hurts. I think there's a time that some kids should specialize and can specialize, but we all know there's not a lot of Division I scholarships out there. It doesn't matter what the sport you play. If you're not that type of kid, there's no reason you can't play 2 sports or 3 sports in a season or in a year, and help multiple teams. We have a lot less, and that might go into, we're not allowed to practice year round. Doesn't matter what it is. We can do skill specific stuff. It doesn't have to be just strength and conditioning. We have practice. Footballs can do 7-on-7. And, basketball can play basketball and wrestling can wrestle and baseball can play baseball. And, so kids are specializing because they feel they need to be there. That's the sport they like the most. If I'm not there, there's a chance I might not make the team or I might not be the starter or whatever their mindset is.
We get back to the scheduling. So you're an administrator. You've got a coaching. Now, I want to know what Bill Swink's ideal schedule is. If this 14 dates and you've got 7 duels, how do you structure your schedule? I mean, just to preface it, how we did it at Pecos, and we had the Northern Virginia Classic, which was a big 32-team event. That's what we usually started the year. Actually, we started with Lake Taylor, which was like it was like a dual meet kind of jamboree where, there were set matchups. It wasn't a tournament. You'd have 2 or 3 duels on a Saturday. Yep. Then you'd go to Northern Virginia and then you'd have some district duels. Then you'd have a small individual tournament, usually right around Christmas. In our case, it was either Deep Creek or something, 12 to 14 teams. Then, a district duel, then the Virginia duels, then our district schedule. And then maybe, a Great Bridge or a Cox on a Friday night. And then we'd get into our district tournaments. I mean, we had, guys going, they're 31-0, 31-1 going to the state tournament. 30 matches is enough. So, that being said, what is your perfect schedule if you get this 14 dates through?
Perfect schedule would be to wrestle some 7 Wednesday dual meets, and then 7 tournaments based on the need of our program at the time, what it is, what level of competition. But you hit something good. We've already been talking about it. One bigger tournament, so the kids are in that bigger environment, like a 32-team tournament. Then a couple 16-man tournaments, because that's the size of your regional and state tournaments. So that's it's a good idea to get your kids experience in that 2-day 16-man bracket, because that's what they're going to experience in the postseason. And the rest of it, we might schedule a quad on a weekend. We do some of the weekend rotationals, not 2 days, 1 days. We wrestle them 4 or 5 matches. They go fairly quick. 7 of variations of those tournaments, and dual meets on the weekends. But I would go 7 and 7. Might give our kids a couple weekends off where you can have a good practice on a Saturday.
Why not? There's no requirement that you have to wrestle every single weekend. Oh, yeah.
I agree. So, give them a little recovery time, and they can sleep in a little bit and come in and do a workout and get some good skills in, and, hone their skills, work on things that they did incorrectly on Wednesday at the dual meet, and in a different type of environment than right after school.
Not to mention, kids get sick too, and nothing sours you on something going out there having to make weight while sick, and then go out there and for a match that the one kid that I need to beat for seeding, I just happen to be wrestling that day. So I still think that the format that, I guess maybe because I'm biased because I grew up with. That was like, this is Lake Taylor kicks off the year. We're going to wrestle 3 really good teams, or, and then you kind of like, that gym was packed. Lake Taylor kickoff classic, and then the Granby, that was packed, and it was dual
we
meets.
used to go down there when I was in North Stafford.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm trying to think, did we wrestle you guys? Yeah. I don't think, I'm not sure we got, North Stafford. Yeah, we did wrestle North Stafford, I think, but that was a year after the good teams. The Pocosin good teams were gone by then. Now they're coming back, but it's like, I just, there's so much that we see that works in other states, and then so much that just, you look back at your home state, my home state of Virginia, like we can fix it. And this is a simple step to say, hey, look, not everybody needs 50 to 60 matches going into the postseason. I mean, you burn kids out. So that's the one thing is practice versus, repetition. I mean, if you repeat bad mistakes and bad technique, as a coach, how hard is it to correct that mistake when a kid's done it 60 times in a year versus a kid doing it 20 times in a year?
Right. And you're right, Jason. I mean, and then you got weather on top of it. We all know Virginia schools close.
For the threat of anything.
Yeah, and they don't allow, most school systems don't allow you to come into practice when there's no school. There are some that do. The majority in Northern Virginia, anyway, they don't. So, you're losing practice time there. This week we were out Monday, Tuesday. We wrestled a duel at King George on Wednesday. We practiced yesterday, which is our first practice since last Thursday because we went to the Virginia duels, and we have a duel meet tonight with Cortland. So, we've had one practice in a 8-9 day period there because of weather and competition.
Yeah, and even not to take away from the wrestling tradition at Spotsylvania, but you've got a lot of kids you've got to teach some technique to.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and this program is made some good progress in the last, even before I got here, the last 4 or 5 years. But there's still a very young program. The team this year has 1 senior on it, and the majority team, I think there's 9 sophomores that are starters. So, they need a lot of skill development still, which is valuable, and you lose that time. You don't get it back when you lose it. So I think it's very important.
Shifting gears as we wrap up here, going to change it up on you a little bit as you are the state chair for the Virginia Wrestling Association, VAWA, which is a state chapter of USA Wrestling. A lot of good things happening with the organization. You've kind of condensed things with Fargo trips. The teams are flying out now. You've also got a really good collection of girls that are wrestling now. Let's just talk about a little bit about the growth of girls wrestling and where that is in Virginia right now.
Yeah, I mean, girls wrestling is growing a lot, and I think Virginia Wrestling Association, and we have some very good people in our girls programs with Sarah Bahora and Alex Santos and some of those folks, they really are out front. We had a meeting last year with the Virginia High School League. We had, 5 sanctioned girls events, high school events this year through the VHSL. We're actually hosting one tomorrow. And by 2021, we're going to have a girls open state championship is the plan, similar to what they've done with golf here in Virginia at the Virginia High School League. So I think we had 280 maybe girls go through the OPC this year in Virginia. I think as we have 12 girls on our team, and they only a few of them compete in the boys events. Most of them are only competing in the all girls events. And I think that's huge for the development of women's wrestling, is when they know they can compete against other girls, they're more likely to do it, especially at the older ages.
Yeah, hopefully if we can get this schedule thing worked out, we get bodies back in lineups. You can have your double duel be boys and girls, bang, bang.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be great. It really would. That would be fun to do.
Bill Swink, any final words as we talk about the schedule? Anything we did not touch on in regards to this proposal? And first of all, what's the I guess we should close with what's the process? When can we hear more about the yay or nay on this type of thing?
Okay, the executive committee I think meets next week, and they'll take it to a first vote item, and if it passes, it will go to the meetings in March, and if it makes that vote, it could become a reality in late May, early June, whenever that next meeting is.
Okay, so this does have the possibility of hitting through next year.
Yes, it does.
And just real quick, what's the is this been widely supported based on kind of a straw poll, walking around talking to coaches? The coaches I've got to communicate with, and some other athletic directors, and most people understand it, and they think it'll work and it'll help the sport. So I'm hoping we can get that message out, and people will get on board. Bill Swink making his return to the Matt Talk Podcast Network, athletic director of Spotsylvania High School in Virginia. Bill, we'll keep tabs on the process, and thanks for coming on the program. Thanks for having me on, Jason. Thanks for all you do. The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button? MattTalkOnline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to this show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed and you're already listening and you love the show and you want to support this show and this network, MattTalkOnline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.